Hi, today I will be presenting on how adolescents become extremists. The rationale for the researchers to research this was that uh, nobody had really looked at what were the psychological mechanisms behind how adolescents become extremists, and whatever research was done was in sociology, so not many psychologists had looked at the subject. The important things to keep in mind while listening to the presentation is that there are 8 factors to radicalization according to private research. That is emotions of being wronged, cognitive style of absolutism and not accepting any gray area, the ideology that would allow them to prevent to commit violent acts, the social factors of having the others in the world being demonized, and the person must also have the capacity to commit extremist acts. Pyramid style of radicalization puts the normal people in society at the bottom and the higher ranking people at the top, and the higher ranking people are the extremists and the normal people are indifferent to extremism, and the more the difference between the top and the bottom shrinks, the more extremist that society becomes. Prior research also suggests that if there's anything threatening an adolescent sense of self, they may get radicalized as a defense mechanism. It was also found that the type of person who does become an extremist are usually extroverts who are outgoing and rigid in their beliefs. The hypothesis for this research is that irrational beliefs are a psychological mechanism in extremism. The people who participated in this research were 295 Romanian students. 125 of them were girls, 170 were boys, mostly were Orthodox Christians, but there were other sects of Christianity too, but they were all. Here are all the measuring tools that the researchers used in this research paper. The results of this research paper showed that almost all of the factors had weak correlations between them, but the CASI, the low frustration tolerance for the demand of fairness, was fairly low at 0.84. The LFT for being able to find work and the amount of rules that were put on them was also fairly low at 0.70, but the demand for fairness and work and rules was still somewhat significant. The mini IPIP was not significant at all, and they found a weak correlation between the gender and ethnicity with the low self-evaluation. But their final conclusion was in the results that the biggest factor for extremism was high global self-evaluation, which basically means that you think you're better than everybody else. Anybody who comes into the factor of the other or not part of your tribe are all basically completely worthless, and that fact will lead them into not really caring when they end up killing them or being super discriminatory towards them. The researchers have rejected their hypothesis. They were really specific in pointing out that irrational beliefs is not a very good way to tell if someone can become extremist, but it is a good way to tell what their political views are. They also pointed out that the social and economic factors and education is not a factor in this. A really good example of this is that Osama bin Laden was the son of a noble Saudi Arabian family, and he was educated in university in business and economics. The researchers pointed out that if an adolescent feels that their group or tribe is more superior to the rest of the world, they are one of the most easiest people who will be radicalized, and their identity state should be in diffusion or moratorium, and they will be very easy targets and have a high likelihood of being radicalized. They found that, unlike prior research suggested, the people who are most likely to be radicalized are people who are low in intellect, are introverted, and are highly agreeable. The researchers also pointed out that if an adolescent is high in CASI and religious and highly religious, they are more likely to be radicalized. Like, for example, Osama bin Laden was pretty religious. Like always, the researchers said that more research was needed in this topic, and they were also keen to point out that this research was done on adolescents which had not yet been radicalized. So maybe research into already radicalized adolescents would be a good idea.